Okay, well, it says we are live on Facebook. I hope that's true. Thank you everyone for joining us. I am Hannah Buschert. I am a board member with the Friends of Haystack Rock here in beautiful Cannon Beach, Oregon. And it has been kind of a a day, you know, it's a little overcast, but nice and cool. So anybody who is in Portland, you might be a little jealous to hear that. I know my folks keep getting mad at me. They're like, "Why is it cool weather down there?" But it is still a beautiful place to be. There have been puffins flying around, common murres, lots of really cool species being seen at Haystack Rock and in the surrounding area. Um, and we are going to talk about that today with our Tufted Puffin extension of our World of Haystack Rock Library Lecture Series. So before we turn it over to our speaker, I would just like to mention a few things. We do have our photography contest going on, and that ends in August 15th. And the theme of that one is seabirds around Haystack Rock, and with a special emphasis on birds bringing back food to their burrows, which you'll find out later in this presentation about why that is useful and why that's important. So please stay tuned in to hear why you should be bringing pictures to us of birds with food in their mouth. And I would also like to thank everyone who participated in the Puffin Watch that we had July 1st through the 4th. It was so much fun. We had lots of great people come down to Haystack Rock and ask us really interesting questions about puffins and learn more about puffins, as well as those who participated on our Facebook Live that we did. And you can go back onto our Facebook page and find out more and watch what we were seeing. So lots of really cool things down there. So thank you all for coming out to the beach. We do hope to do one in August. We don't have a date just yet for that, but we had so much fun, we have to do it again. So stay tuned and we will get a date together soon. Also, we're at the farmers market a couple days this month. We were there, I believe, yesterday, and then we'll be there in another 2 weeks. So if you need some of your tufted puffin gear, come to the Cannon Beach Farmers Market. It's Tuesday, I want to say the 27th or so. Yes, and we will have tons of tufted puffin stuff for you. Anyways, moving on, I would like to introduce Shawn Stephensen, who has been a wildlife biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for almost 28 years. Shawn worked in Fish and Wildlife Enhancement Branch in Salt Lake City, Utah, conducting contaminant studies for 4 years, migratory bird management in Anchorage, Alaska, conducting seabird studies for 15 years. And for the past 9 years, we've been so lucky to have him here on the Oregon Coast National Wildlife Refuge, based out of Newport, Oregon. So just before I turn over to you, Shawn, I just want to mention everyone who is watching, please, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat and we will ask Shawn at the end. So stay tuned for those answers. So thank you so much, Shawn, for joining us. And I'm so excited to hear more about puffins.
Okay, yeah. And so folks may want to mute themselves also. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, did that come through, Hannah?
Yep, you're all good, Shawn.
Okay, great. Okay, as Hannah was saying, my name is Shawn Stephensen. I work for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service as a wildlife biologist. A small correction, I've been in Newport at the Newport office since 2007, so 14 years. Um, so I've been around the Fish and Wildlife Service all of my career. It's a great agency. We do a lot of excellent work working with habitat and wildlife species. I do work for the Oregon Coast National Wildlife Refuge Complex. At the complex, we manage 6 different national wildlife refuges: Cape Mears, Three Arch Rocks, Nestucca Bay, Siletz Bay, Bandon Marsh, and then Oregon Islands National Wildlife Refuge. And those are shown on the map. The little dots are the islands or rocks and reefs associated with Oregon Islands. And that's what I want to focus on today. So Oregon Islands National Wildlife Refuge was established in 1935. We have almost 400 offshore acres and 174 headland acres, 1,854 rocks, reefs, and islands associated with the refuge. Now that's a trivia question that you might want to remember, because there was, a few months back, there was a radio announcer asking that exact questions. How many rocks, reefs, and islands are on offshore of Oregon? And that's the answer, because all of those rocks, reefs, or islands that are surrounded by water at mean high tide, those are part of the refuge, except for one, and that's Tillamook Rock. But we have a conservation easement with Tillamook Rock. And so this refuge spans the entire coastline of Oregon, approximately 320 miles. We have the biggest resource associated with Oregon Islands Refuge is seabirds. We have almost 1.3 million breeding seabirds along the coast, 15 different species at approximately 400 different colonies. And you might say, well, how do you know that? Well, we do an annual aerial seabird survey that documents surface nesting seabirds. And we take photographs of all the colonies along the coast, and then we count the birds in the photographs. It's really fun. However, we can't document all species with that aerial surveys, including burrow or ground nesting species. Here are a list of all of the different species that are here in Oregon. The common murre is the most abundant species, followed by Leach's storm petrels. And then down at the very bottom, we've got tufted puffin, which currently our estimate is only a few hundred birds, pretty small. So we're going to focus on the puffin and give you a brief description about puffins. They're a large alcid, approximately 40 centimeters in length. They weigh around an average of 800 grams. Beautiful bird. I'm sure everybody has seen one. If you haven't, you want to try and find one and take a look at it. Black, brownish body with a white face patch, and they've got orange legs and feet and bill. They've got golden plumes that are on their head, and they're actually feathers and not hair. Some folks think it's hair, but they're actually feathers. The bill is really cool looking during the breeding season. It's orange with grooves, and then has a rictal rosette at the base. And then in the non-breeding season, they lose their tufts of feathers, and they shed their plates on their beak, and then the actual plumage changes a bit, and they are a little more drab, but they're still beautiful birds. Now, puffins, there are approximately 3 million worldwide. About 80% of those nest in North America. Alaska has the largest population, about 2.3 million, and at about 693 different colonies. Now, the Oregon population is very low, in the hundreds, at 15 different active colonies. One of those colonies is at Haystack Rock. The puffin population, they are decreasing throughout most of its range. Um, but they are increasing in the Gulf of Alaska on out towards the Aleutian chain. And then the Russian population is unknown at this time. There's limited research going on there. So we don't know a whole lot about Russia. But the biggest concern here is all of the different areas where the populations are decreasing. So we wanted at Fish and Wildlife Service, we wanted to study haystack, study the puffins and their habitat, and see if we could figure out what's going on, why they're declining. And so we, in 2010, we initiated a study at Haystack Rock, where we were conducting intensive population status assessment. And we have had several volunteers that would stand out by the rock and spend hours and hours and hours every week, May through September during the breeding season, monitoring the birds, doing counts of birds in the water, in the air, on the land, and then documenting the burrow occupancy. And for the last 10 years, Tim Holleran has been doing that. And we're so appreciative of him and his work. Uh, just a quick photo of some notes that were taken of Haystack Rock and the different colony, different burrow locations. We take photographs of the rock from the beach side, and we give them to Tim, and then Tim marks on those photographs the different locations of the active burrows. And then at the end of the year, we compile all of that data, which is usually a 5 or 6 inch stack of hard copy data sheets. But recently, just the past couple of years, we've been able to do it electronically, which speeds up the analysis process. So this is what we've come up with all of the work that Tim has been doing. You'll notice in 2010, we had a population estimate of 127 birds. That's when we started the monitoring at Haystack Rock. But previous to that, you can see the population estimates clear back from the 1960s. And then we had a huge population increase in the late 80s, 1988, of 612 birds. But it's been fairly steady since we started this population assessment at Haystack Rock. Last year, we were down a little bit to 98 birds. And this year, it's from reports from Tim, it looks like there's even a further decline, but we won't know for sure until we get his data at the end of the summer. So we're not only focused on puffins at Haystack Rock. We are currently conducting a coast-wide tufted puffin survey. So a little bit of background. So in 1988, there was a survey done, a coast-wide survey, which documented approximately 5,000 tufted puffins at 62 different colonies. And then in 2008, I took a crew out and we documented approximately 300 birds at only 15 colonies. So that was a huge decline, an order of magnitude. It threw up some red flags trying to figure out what's happening here. So we tried to do this coast-wide survey last year, but because of COVID restrictions, we were unable to do that. We couldn't get permission from leadership. But now we have permission, and actually today was our first day of the survey. Um, it's going to take us approximately 5 weeks, surveying 2 to 3 days per week, um, to complete this survey. It's along the entire Oregon coast. And so we're looking at not only the current breeding sites, but also the historical breeding sites. Anywhere they were documented breeding, we're going to take a look at. And we do this with the boat, um, and sometimes from land. And also we will be going on to some of the islands to assess the population. So there's a lot of work there that has to take place. We've got a lot of support from volunteers, interns, from private citizens, Fish and Wildlife Service employees. And also I want to recognize Friends of Haystack Rock for their contribution in support of this project. We really appreciate that. There's so much that we can't do at Fish and Wildlife Service without the help of our friends groups and just local tufted puffin enthusiasts. So um, shout out to all those that support Fish and Wildlife Service and Tufted Puffin Research. Now, there's a professional seabird group called Pacific Seabird Group. They're a group of seabird research and managers that are dedicated to understanding seabirds and their environment. This group was formed in 1972, and it still continues today. And the Pacific Seabird Group has different technical committees and that focus on different species of seabirds. And one of those seabirds is the tufted puffin. And so there's a tufted puffin technical committee. And this committee is dedicated to that species, trying to figure out, you know, trying to determine data gaps and figure out what's going on with the populations. So during the listing process, there were information gaps that were identified, and the Pacific Seabird Group are getting together with the scientists and biologists and managers trying to uh, assess those different data gaps and fill them with data. One is to determine the genetic structure of the puffin populations throughout their range, trying to see if puffins are related to one another. Say if the Oregon puffins are related to Alaska or Russia, etc., trying to determine if they're a distinct population segment. Also trying to look at the distribution of the birds in the wintertime and their habitat use. We know very little about where they go in the wintertime. And so that's another focus that the technical committee is looking at. And then also there are different species that are closely related to the puffin. And we're looking at the life histories of those different species, including, you know, the role of the diet, and trying to figure out why the birds are declining. If a closely related species is declining also, and they're eating the same prey or not getting a certain prey in their diet, we want to know what that is. So this committee, it does support Fish and Wildlife Service research, and we have made requests for different genetic samples. And so the different projects that we're dealing with right now is, first off, is population genetics. while we're doing our coastwide survey along Oregon, we're going to try to collect blood, feathers, or eggshells uh, from puffins, but also folks in along the west coast of the Pacific, Oregon, California, are also involved in this same project where they're going out as they're surveying birds and have an opportunity to go on an island or capture a bird or find a dead bird, take a sample and send it in. Same thing with the diet. We're going to be doing collecting poop samples and sending them into the lab for DNA amplification and sequencing to determine what the birds are eating. And so all of this is going along the entire western coast of the Pacific, and we have many researchers and scientists involved. And so hopefully we can gather enough information to fill some of those data gaps. It's very slow going because, as you can tell, Oregon has very few birds, and it's difficult to get a sample from those birds. We don't want to disrupt their breeding cycles, cause disturbance to the birds or anything like that. But if we find a dead bird on the beach or in the water, we'll collect it and get samples that way. So the next steps for the puffins and different projects is we're always looking for master's students or PhD student to help with the research. We're always looking for different ways to fund the research projects and looking for support from anybody that's interested in conservation of the tufted puffin. And again, I wanted to mention Friends of Haystack Rock, how supportive they have been throughout the years. There has been so much work completed because of their support. And I know it's because they're passionate about tufted puffins. And I'm sure that there are many other people out there that are the same way. They want to conserve and protect and help with any way they can. So we Fish and Wildlife Service is always looking for some type of support. Now, we do have a current master's student from Oregon State University that's working with us with Fish and Wildlife Service. And his name is Noah, and I'm going to turn over the presentation to him and let him share what he's up to and the type of help he needs. So Noah, go ahead, take it away.
Okay. Hi guys, my name's Noah. I'm a graduate student at Oregon State University, and I'm affiliated with the Seabird Oceanography Lab. My advisor is Rachel Orban. And yeah, I've been working with Shawn so far this season on a few different things. He kind of touched on a lot of this stuff, but basically I'm kind of trying to lay the foundation for, like he said, to bring more graduate students and more research in the future for tufted puffins. So far I've basically been working on a threefold project that's both ecological research and also sort of a community outreach effort. And the first thing is I've helped Shawn sort of piece together all of the different Oregon coast volunteer groups and sort of bird watchers up and down the coast where traditionally we've had tufted puffins. There are often groups that are really passionate about it and want to be involved in an ongoing effort. So I've contacted them, and sort of we have a coastwide collaboration to try and pick up any tufted puffin samples that might be washed up on the Oregon shores. It's a very rare event. I think it's happened maybe once or twice in the last 20 years or so. Shawn can be more certain about that number, but nonetheless, the more people involved in the project and the more people sort of aware of the importance of collecting a tufted puffin if it were to wash up on the beach, then the more likely it is that we can get the information that we need from that. The second thing is Shawn and the lab that I'm affiliated with have also been focused on murre research along the Oregon coast for quite a long time. And one of the things they've been looking at is disturbances with bald eagles and peregrine falcons and other sort of avian predators. And so I've sort of adapted their disturbance protocols and started observing the tufted puffins at Haystack to see if bald eagle presences are having an impact on tufted puffins abandoning nests or, being prey for the eagles or what have you. And lastly, because there are very few tufted puffins, one thing that's really important for us to learn is what other birds are eating as well as tufted puffins. So I've started a community science project called Birds with Fish, and I will share with you a flyer that's made recently. Can you guys see that? Okay, I'm just going to assume yes. So Birds with Fish is a project that we've just recently launched, and what we're interested in is having experienced coastal photographers both submit old pictures that they might have of tufted puffins, but also other birds along the Oregon coast that are carrying fish over the water or back to their burrows, anything really. But also we want to encourage coastal photographers to go out right now during breeding season to take pictures of birds as they're bringing food back to their chicks. That can be a really important indicator of why one species is successful and another is struggling. So Birds with Fish is sort of an effort to both collect data through my own effort, but also have the wide variety of Oregon coastal photographers that are really passionate about coastal birds to submit pictures so that over time we can kind of see how different species diets are changing with time or with oceanic conditions. And that could provide a lot of inference for the kind of data that Tim Halloran has been taking with puffin presence at Haystack Rock. So that's sort of what I've been working on. And we're hoping that these projects can last long term. And if anybody is really interested in Birds with Fish, I'm actually going to be giving a quick seminar next week on Tuesday the 21st. So you can just copy and paste this link here or send me a direct email. I can put it in the chat box here in a minute. And yeah, so thanks for having me at this talk. And also a big thanks to Friends of Haystack who have supported my project very graciously. And Shawn, of course, who has also supported my project.
Well, thank you all. Noah, I'm sure we can share that on our Facebook page as well, so folks can get that information and participate. But I do have a couple questions for you. So what makes a good photo that you're looking for? I mean, is it composition? Is it just like the fish in the mouth?
Sure.
What's the best thing for you on that?
Sure. So, I mean, I'd love to have pictures of the quality that are on this flyer. That's fantastic. And if there are folks out there taking pictures of this quality, please send them my way because it's just so easy for me to flip through them and ID them. But, in general, they don't have to be quite this quality. But what has to be clear is the fish that's in their mouth. So if the picture is too far away and it's too dark, or you can only see half the fish and it's dark, those are kind of questionable. But to be honest with you guys, if you have a picture of a bird with fish, send it, because I'd rather you send the picture to me, and if it turns out I can't use it, then that's okay. But if it turns out I can use it, then it's useful information. So pictures of all qualities. iPhone pictures maybe won't quite hit the bill, but yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
It does. And I'm going to get you a good iPhone photo of some birds with fish on their mouth. I
Okay.
promise you. Well, it looks like we don't have any other questions, but thank you both so much for joining us for this World of Haystack Rock library lecture. It's been so much fun to work with you both, and I can't wait to see, what sort of impact we can have on the tufted puffin population. So thank you for working with the Friends of Haystack Rock, and thank you all for tuning in to our library lecture series, our extended tufted puffin lecture series. We will have another one next month, so make sure to check the details on our Friends of Haystack Rock Facebook page, as well as our website, friendsofhaystackrock.org. And thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you next month, if not sooner.